Hello, and welcome to the final episode for season 1 of the Combed Education Podcast, Let's Talk Hair. My name is Araz Nelson. I am your host, and I want to start this episode off first and foremost by wishing you a very happy new year. It is January 1st when you were listening to this. Not sure how we got to 2023, but here we are. And so I want to wish you a happy new year, a healthy new year, and a prosperous new year. Before I start getting into kind of the meat and potatoes of this episode, I figured it was a fitting episode for the first of the year. If you are anything like me, I set a lot of goals. I'm very goal oriented because I find that if I don't, I drift and I kind of like squirrel everywhere in my life. And so I have to be very, very strategic on the things that I want to accomplish. Now, with that being said, there's flexibility in this. This is just, goal setting for me, or a vision board, or however you do it, is a roadmap. Okay. It is not law. It is not set in stone. Sometimes goals change. Sometimes things shift. But the important part here is to get clear on what the goals I want for myself are, right? As I always say, take what works and leave what doesn't. So today's episode, I'm going to share with you my personal goal setting and crushing strategy. Okay. My goal for you is to have your best year yet, whether that is financially, whether that is in your business, whether that is in your relationship, whether that is personally, your health, your mental health, whatever that is. If we take a little bit of time, if we carve out a little bit of time and set up a little roadmap for ourselves, it really helps anyways for me to stay on track. So I'm going to share with you, before I share my strategy, I want to share with you kind of like a 2022 recap of what my goals were the beginning of the year, and then where I landed at the end of the year. This is in no way, shape, or form to like boast or to gloat or to none of that. Like, this is just straight results that have been achieved by me using my goal setting strategies. So the number one goal that I had was I wanted to do 50 classes in 2022. A lot of you guys know that I am the lead educator for Magix 10. I'm also lead educator in my territory for Magix 10. We do webinars, and I also do in-person classes. So my goal was to do 50 classes in 2022. Let's just say I superseded that goal, and I closed the year out at 64 classes, both in person and online, through Magix, through Beauty Solutions. I've done a couple of classes with Nikki Wildflower. So I had a goal of 50 classes, and I landed far beyond that at 64 classes. So super cool. Another one of my biggest goals for 2022 was to create and launch the Fundamentals Course Shop. It's my signature online, hands-on, hybrid course. And so the goal was to put it all together, launch it, and get 50 students. And so where I landed, I launched it, and I landed just over 80 students. So the goal was 50 students, 50 hairdressers that I could help impact. And we're closing out the year right around a little bit over 80. I think it was like 82 students. So huge for me, right? Like, I set these goals thinking, it's a stretch, right? Like, I can get it, but it's going to take some work. I can get it, but maybe not, blah, 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 right? So just over 80 students, and more than anything, like the creation and the launch of it was huge because it's been in my mind for so long. So like, to actually execute on that and create it and then have people take it and like it, like, what the fuck? So that was really, really cool. Another one of my biggest goals was to launch the podcast. Okay. And I wanted to launch the podcast and have 50 episodes. So the goal was to have at least one podcast a week, every week in 2022. and we closed it out at 52 episodes. So I stayed consistent, and either 51 or 52. I got to check my notes, but either way, hit the goal. Like, what? I also wanted 5,000 downloads on the podcast. We're at just over 9K. So again, set the goal, revisited the goal, and then now I'm sharing with you guys where I landed with some of these goals. Let's see. Financial goal, I wanted to increase my income by 50%. So I knew that I was going to be working a lot this year, and I thought, you know what, I can increase by 50%. And when we broke down the numbers, I actually doubled my income in 2022. Wild. And then my husband asked me, he's like, what did you make your first year as a licensed stylist? So I shared with him that number, and we worked out the numbers. And guys, from my first year to this year, which is my 21st or 22nd year, so in 20 years, I have increased my income 1,000%. That's 10x. Wild. Why? Because I set my goals. Now, with that being said, I had some other goals that I did not land. Okay, I did not land. One goal was to meditate every single day. Did not hit that. I think I meditated about half of the year. Another goal was to release some weight to the universe, and I did the opposite and actually found some. So that kind of didn't go the way that I wanted it to. But I know why, because my focus was very heavy on business. My mindset, my focus, my energy was very much in building. So with that being said, I wanted to share some of those wins because I think it's not lost on the fact that I spend the end of the year or the first couple of days of the year setting some major goals. And so what I want to do is share with you how I do that, especially right now with the new year. Like, it's one of the most exciting times. You know, we're busy during the holiday season, the energy is up. So I use that momentum to really kind of map out the goals for my year. So the thing is, a lot of us have goals, right? Like, raise your hand if you have ever created goals. We set these goals, but then what? Right? I mean, if there is no action to back it up, it's just a dream. It's a wish. It's a pipe. It's a someday goal, right? And I've learned the hard way that the someday goals, they don't happen. They don't happen because excuses, things, life, all I'll do it someday. No, do it now, right? Like, what can you do now to set yourself up to get closer to that goal? So in usual Ara's fashion, I want to offer some perspective when it comes to goals. This is how I structure my goals. And like I said before, like I always say, this works for me. So take what works for you and leave what doesn't. I'm not telling you this is what you have to do. Take what works, leave what doesn't. So the number one lesson or strategy or mindset around setting goals, and this is the most important one because I've fallen victim to doing the opposite of this. You have to set a goal that motivates you, a goal that lights you up, a goal that if you had, you would be fucking thrilled. So it's not a goal necessarily, or goals for your spouse or for your kids or your coworkers or your boss. It's for you. So even if, let's say, one of your goals is to have a better marriage, that goal on the why behind the better marriage should not be for your spouse. It should be for you. Why do you want a better marriage? Or maybe it's you want a better relationship with your kids. If the goal to have a better relationship with your kids is so that your kids don't feel neglected, or so that your kids don't feel like mommy's not there, or daddy's not there, or whatever, that's not going to be in alignment, right? Why do you want a better relationship with your kids? What is it going to do for you? Because when shit hits the fan and things get hard, it's so easy to put shit on the back burner if it's not going to be intrinsically valuable for you. So number one, Set a goal that lights you up, first and foremost. Number two, maybe you guys have heard this before, SMART goal setting. It's an acronym. And I'll break down the acronym. So the S is for specific. So whatever goals that you set have to be very specific. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say one of your goals is, I want to take more classes in 2023. Good goal, but it's not specific. So what a specific goal would sound like would be more like, I want to take 4 classes, this class, this class, this class, and this class in 2023. So it's not, I want to take more classes. These are the classes I want to take, or I want to take 4 classes. And when I find them, I know that I'm going to take those. Okay. So I want to take more classes. No, I'm going to be very specific. I'm taking 4 classes next year. See the difference? Okay. So S is for specific. M is for measurable. So you have to be able to measure and track your progress to know if you're on the right track. So I shared with you, one of my goals was to make 50% more. Like, I know what that number was. So an example for you would be, okay, I want to be wealthy, right? My goal for next year is financially wealthy, or financially free, or pay off credit cards. What is this specific? So I want to make $120,000 in 2023. That's more specific. I want to pay off $15,000 of credit card debt in 2023, right? Not a wish, not a, I want, like, no, be very, very specific and measurable. So how can you measure, right? At 3 months into 2022, I measured my numbers to see where I was at. Was I getting close to my 50%, or was I so far out? And then I can change my strategy. How can I bring more income in? So it has to be specific. It has to be measurable. The A is for action. So what is the action that you can take to make it happen? So let me give you an example. Maybe one of your goals is to be more consistent on social media. A lot of us have that goal. We know that social media is so important for our growth, for our business, for all of the things. So maybe your goal is, I'm going to be more consistent with social media. Okay. So the action step for that would be, I will post 3 times a week on social media. See how that is specific, it's measurable, and there's an action behind it. So this is what I'm going to do to get my specific and measurable goal. So I want to be consistent on social media. No, I will post 3 times a week on social media. You can even get more specific. One post will be educational, one post will be funny, relatable, and one post will be entertainment. I don't know, whatever, however you want to break that down. But the A is for action. What is the action step that you will take to get this specific and measurable goal? The R is for realistic. Now, this is subjective, because what I think is realistic and what you think is realistic could be 2 very different things. But when I say realistic, here's what I mean. You definitely want to stretch, right? You want the goal to be like, uncomfortable, but you don't want to set yourself up for failure. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One example, let's say you are making $75,000 a year. To set your goal at $500,000, unless you got some big things in the works, that is a huge setting yourself up for failure, versus you're making 75K. Okay, maybe I'll double it next year at 150 or even 100, right? So stretch, push yourself right outside of the comfort zone, but don't set yourself up for failure. So here's another example, right? I'm going to take 10 classes next year. Okay, like, that's amazing, but is this realistic? Is it realistic with your time? Is it realistic with your money? So maybe another way to make an educational goal more realistic could be, I will invest in 4 classes in 2023, 1 class per quarter. Now that's the goal. If you can do more, cool. But like, you're setting yourself up once every 3 months. Y'all know 3 months goes by fast. So to set a realistic goal is very important, because if you're going to be really far off from your goal, it's it can be deterring once you're in it, right? Like, let's say you have 1,000 social media followers right now and you want to grow that. Setting yourself up for a goal of 50,000 followers, that's kind of hard. Is it doable? Maybe, sure, yes, but that's kind of hard. So could a realistic goal be 15,000 or 10,000 or even 5,000, right? Like, what's a stretch that's uncomfortable, but that's not going to set you up for failure? And then the T in SMART, that acronym, is for time. So maybe you've heard it this way before. A goal without a date is just a dream. So set a time frame for yourself so that you can stay on track with your goals throughout the year. So example, if you have a goal of getting 50 new clients in 2023, 50 new clients, specific, it's measurable, it's realistic, right? So, but the 50 new clients over a 12-month period is a little bit broad. So how can you break that down into something that is a time goal, that is specific, that is measurable, that is an action step? Well, you could say, okay, I will get 1 new client a week every week for the remainder of the year. That would be 52 new clients. So see how if you say 50 new clients, you're going to get to October and be like, oh shit, right? But if your goal is 1 new client a week, that's more in the forefront of your mind. Like, okay, 1 new client a week, 1 new client a week, versus I'm going to get 50 clients. It's kind of like losing weight, right? If you want to lose 50 pounds, that seems so daunting. But if you focus on 2 pounds at a time, 3 pounds at a time, if that's your goal, like way more doable. You're going to get to the same end result, but how can you kind of hack your brain to make it more digestible so that you do take the actionable steps to make that happen? So make your goals SMART. Use that acronym. It's not just for fluff. It freaking works. Okay. Number 3, put your goals in writing. I am old school. I have a pen and paper around me at all times. I write everything down, or I use the notes on my phone. But to put it in writing, to solidify it, to make it concrete, like have it written down or typed out somewhere. Okay. And I know it's old school, but you have to remind yourself of your goals so that you stay on track. So a hack that I use is I make a note of my goals on my phone, right, in the notes app, and then I screenshot it, and it's my lock screen. So every time I pick up my phone, I see it. And a lot of times it ends up being white noise and I numb out to it and I don't pay attention to it, but it's there. I see it. So psychologically, I see it, God, 500 times a day, right? So put it in writing, write it down, type it out, have it somewhere. Because when you come back at the end of the year, you can then kind of compare, okay, where did I land and what were my goals? Kind of like what I did at the top of this episode. Put it in writing. Make an action plan. So this is kind of in line with the SMART technique of the time, right? A goal without a date is just a dream. So make an action plan, because here's the thing. 2 of the main components on whether or not you will achieve your goals are commitment and self-regulation. So the commitment part of it comes from making an action plan and then following through with it. So if education is a goal of yours, an action plan would be to purchase the class, purchase the course, set the time in your calendar, and make sure you show up. Okay. So the commitment part of this is, buy the course. The self-regulation part of it is show up. I will tell you from my own personal experience, what worked phenomenally for me this year, above all else, is the commitment. The commitment to consistency. So that is what, if I look back and what helped me get to here, is I was committed and I was consistent. There was no excuse. There was nothing. Even if I didn't feel like it, I fucking did it. Whether it was setting up a website, whether it was the blog and the podcast episodes, whether it was making the reels, whether it was making the content, whatever it was, I created processes and systems to make it easier for myself to stay consistent. I set myself up for success versus just kind of being how I normally am and just like, well, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. No, there's none of that. So the commitment and consistency and self-regulation to show up, huge. Okay. And then lastly, stick to it. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying, that like your commitment to yourself and your goal or your goals have to be bigger than your excuses. And there's a lot of mindset that goes into that. There's a lot of psychology that goes into it, but you got to chip away at it. You're not going to get it right away. Maybe you will. I don't know. It's taking me years and I'm still fucking chipping away at it, but you got to chip away at it, right? Because you have to, that commitment has to be bigger than the excuses. Check in with yourself occasionally throughout this year, right? If you find that you're slacking or you're falling off, revisit the goals and remember why you made them in the first place. This is why it's so important that your goals have to light you up. You don't want to increase your revenue because the salon owner thinks that that's what you should do. You want to increase your revenue because you want liberty. You want to be able to take time off. You want to be able to buy what you want to buy. You want to be able to go on vacation. That is the why, not because the boss told you to, right? So when you slack, when you fall off, when you're falling short, you go back to the why it lights you up, right? Because if it didn't light you up and if it was for somebody else, let's be real, like you're not going to recommit to it. But if it's something that lit you up and if it was something that motivated you, you just have to remind yourself of why. What's the big picture, right? And then get your ass up and get back to doing what you need to do to make sure you get your goals. So I hope that this was encouraging for you. I hope that this was helpful for you. I highly recommend, you don't have to do anything I say, but I highly recommend setting a couple of really big goals in a very strategic way and stay consistent and committed to it and see how much you've accomplished a year from today. It could be very, very life-changing. So, like I said, I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope that there were some strategies here that you can take and implement in your life. Like I mentioned at the top of the episode, this is the last episode of season 1. We will be back in February with season 2. And as I close this out, I feel like I have to say a huge thank you. There are so many of you who listen to this episode or this podcast every Sunday. There's so many of you who engage and save and share the content that I put out, whether it's on the blog, on the podcast, on Instagram. And it just brings me so much happiness and so much joy that what I have to say and what I have learned and what I have to share is helping you. I've always said it. My mission in this industry is to inspire and empower you through my own learnings, right? I've got over 20 years of experience. And listen, I don't do everything the right way, but I know what has worked for me. And my goal is to share it with you and hope that it helps you. So from what I can tell, you guys are kind of into it. I think it's helping. And so for that, I am grateful. I am so thankful for all of you. I wish you nothing but the best this year. I think that it can be an amazing year, especially if you get really, really clear and come up with a strategy to really knock your own fucking socks off. Because I'm telling you, a year from now, you can look back and be like, what the fuck is my life? That's what I want for you. So I hope you have a happy new year. I'll catch you guys back in February.